bike was stolen off the boat last night.
I got my bike back.
We just took a beating. We just took a serious beating. We're coming down these pretty mellow rapids, but they threw us into that rock. In this little town on the Mekong, and of course we have a crew of followers making sure we don't run amok in their town. It's a beautiful little town though, a nice cliffs behind us, and a beautiful temple too. So at the end of the day last night, we walked up into town and did my sign language and asked for a place to sleep, and the gentleman on the right there had a spare room and offered us a place to stay for a fairly cheap rate. So it was a bit bigger than I was expecting. There's actually 2 noodle soup places. And they also have this nice temple here. Felix has been suffering from some sort of heat exhaustion. He's been moving pretty slow the past few days. He says he's got it before, so I'm not too concerned. He needs some better rest apparently. Meanwhile, we're in this beautiful, beautiful spot. I'd say one of the nicest stretches of the Mekong we've been on so far. Coming in here last night was beautiful. We had to paddle for the last half an hour, 20 minutes or so to get here. We didn't know that this even existed. Let's do it. Just like that. Chào Xuân Yang.
Le.
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 Le. Khop chai lai lai for having us. Lei here saw me walking down the street of the village and offered us a place to stay in his house last night, and it was wonderful. He pulled out beds for us and we slept right beside his family, which was... Felix was snoring so loud that I hope they got a good night's sleep. It's been a pleasure. Khop chai. I've just been walking through this town now for about an hour and had, I don't know, hundreds of times people saying Falung, 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 and that's about it. I found this temple and I walked up behind the temple and found this place. I haven't seen the assortment of animals around Buddha before, but there's quite an assortment here. Buddha's happily perched overlooking the temple that's down below. Sun's about to set. I'm gonna go catch up with Felix, who's been feeling a bit ill. I think we'll spend another day here in Pak Lai while he heals, and then we'll get back down onto the Mekong River. After a 4-night stay in Pak Lai, Felix is pretty much healed up. I think he's good to go. And there come some waves to slosh our boat around. Not so bad. Got some papaya in the boat and we're pretty much ready to go. Head back down on the river. Today we should be hitting the border with Thailand down in the distance, and then we'll start paddling pretty much due east to Vientiane. Looking forward to it. I was just remembering how we showed up at this one town and there was maybe 4 or 5 ladies, somewhat tipsy, and they were joking and laughing at how I couldn't speak Lao, and then they offered me a place to stay, and there was some other gentlemen there as well who were also drinking beer, and one guy was speaking French, and they kept on saying Pak Fen, and I translated it, and it was dry party. It was definitely not a dry party, but we quickly realized that they were celebrating the beginning of the dry season, and they were stoked. And I think they were pointing that out because they knew they were all a bit tipsy and they needed an excuse, especially the chief. The chief was quite drunk himself, and he ended up showing us down the road to another homestay. Thankfully, we didn't have to party with them all night long and listen to karaoke. It's good times though. Don't you think, Felix?
Yeah, it was funny. But the chief, I don't know. Yeah, I didn't really get some problems with our passports finally.
Well, that wasn't the chief, that was the bookkeeper.
That was a bookkeeper.
Yeah, the bookkeeper looked at our passports for a long time.
Yeah.
He didn't
Half
quite.
an hour maybe.
Yeah. And then he asked us to pay Kip, and I laughed at him. It's like, haha. And we didn't pay him anything. We made it to no man's land. So from here on, the Mekong River acts as the border between Laos and Thailand. Are you ready for no man's land, Felix?
I feel like I'm living my whole life in no man's land.
He feels like he's living his whole life in no man's land. So we've heard that the officials can be a bit sensitive about boats traveling this river because you never know if you're in Laos or Thailand. Hopefully none of them come over and force us to go to either side. I'm definitely a bit concerned because I don't want to get forced to be towed somewhere. So I'm just going to stick to the Lao side here and hope that it all works out smoothly. I don't think there'll be any issue. The fact that we're paddling so slow, although we do sort of stick out like filleting, so they might just want to bug us to try and get some money out of us. But we'll say no, we have a right to travel on this river. Sort of. We asked Naga and Naga said it was cool. So yeah, pretty much right now we're actually hitting that point where the border comes out. There's a Buddha up on a hill here. I think they'll understand. I think we'll be fine. And the fruit of the day is the long gan. Quite common so far in Vietnam and Laos. Sold in bundles like these. About a kilo costs, I don't know, $1.50 maybe. Trick to opening them is just to squeeze them from the side. Instead of trying to peel through them, you just pop them, and then you just open them up. They have a very grape-like texture, but no sourness to them. They're just pretty much sweet little grapes. Pop them in your mouth like this. There's a seed. I don't think it's edible. If it is, it's very hard. That also goes into the river. Tasty little treats on the river. Longan. So pretty much the moment we hit the border with Thailand, their development is showing itself. They're sand mining the Mekong River and piling it on land, probably for construction purposes somewhere. What for? Curious. Very curious. So last night we pulled up to this town right in front of a temple and asked where we could stay, and the lady actually directed us to the temple and a monk offered us a place to sleep. Basically he said we had a tent and he showed us where we could tent and then told us that we could actually sleep inside the temple, but I didn't really want to sleep inside the temple and he didn't really want to have us sleep inside the temple either. So I ended up putting up my mosquito net just on the outside right here. And Felix set up the tent, and it was quite a nice sleep. There's a little market just around the town that we went to. There's the temple, lots of Buddhas. So we just paddled past another immigration border crossing across the Mekong between Laos and Thailand, and there's been a lot of sort of shallow spots in this part of the river with little rocks and grass, and this is a nice spot with a cliff. Felix, what do you think?
Normally the mornings are more relaxed than today.
Yeah, this morning was pretty exciting. We had some rapids, and this one part particularly, it didn't look that bad at first, but then shortly after dropping down the first little rapid, there was just a ton of water bubbling up at the surface and whirlpooling, and we just did our best to maintain our balance, and we made it through fine, but it was definitely, we were on the edge, pretty close to taking on a lot of water and probably sinking. Just because there's so many big whirlpools, like it's just boiling up, like, I don't know, almost a meter, I'd say, above the surface of the water. There's just like this big boiling whirlpools. Pretty exciting. And then there's this cliff. Check that out. Had to paddle quite a bit, but the river's been moving pretty fast most of the time, so it's been pretty nice. We're making good time. So last night, right as we pulled up, a monk came down to the river and he started asking us questions pretty immediately. It's like, where are you coming from? Or what are you doing? Do you have passport? Where's your life jacket? Seemed like pleasant enough guy, but he was sort of a bit erratic, talking quite a bit. He told us that the head man of the town will want to see our visas, our passport, and very friendly, but also like sort of talking fairly fast. And anybody can basically become a monk in Laos, and it's actually, most men are all expected to become monks at some point in their life for somewhere between 3 months and a year. We were chatting to him a bit later and asked him what he was doing before he became a monk. I had business. And I was like, oh yeah, what did you do? He's like, oh, many things. And I was like, okay, cool. Me and Felix started formulating theories. I started thinking that maybe he had issues with the gang or drugs or something, and this was his escape. Go to the temple and just lay low for a few years and stay away from the dangers or the troubles of wherever, you know, maybe he's living in the city and there was just gangsters after him, or he was just sort of there to escape drugs of some sort. Then we started thinking even more based on specifically the fact that there was a tractor had pulled in, and he was like, oh, they're coming to, you know, they go fish at night and they load the fish onto the tractor. And I'm like, oh yeah, cool. And he's like, to sell at the market that's like right around the corner. And we'd been to the market, and the market was actually quite small. Definitely could not sustain a tractor full of fish, like maybe a backpack full of fish at most. And then I started thinking, I came to the theory that the whole temple was actually a front for a drug smuggling ring from Thailand into Laos. It'd be a perfect front because nobody would expect the monk. You know, there's right on the river, right across the border is Thailand. And this guy, he sort of seemed a bit sketchy to begin with. He never made eye contact when he was speaking. Very rarely did he make eye contact. And he seemed a bit worried when we showed up looking for a place to stay, but he's also, you know, he's asking about our papers and stuff and making sure we were safe. And then, so he's just a front for drug smuggling. So he's, at the night, the fishermen come in and bring the drugs across into Laos. And then it's just, you know, an hour, 2 hour drive into Vientiane where they sell it all. We noticed the guy had a big TV, although the TV on second look, it wasn't actually that nice. So he's obviously low in the gang. Or maybe that's just to make it seem like he doesn't have a lot of money. He did have a nice cell phone though too. And he wanted to take photos of us. Maybe just to make sure that if we ratted on him, then he'd know who we are and he can take us out. I don't know, what do you think, Felix? What's your final guess, opinion on the guy? Is he a drug smuggling monk, or is he just recovering from drugs? Felix says everything is possible, everything and nothing. Those Germans, so vague sometimes. As he dips his socks in the river. Felix has opted to wear socks because the sun is pretty strong and it could burn your feet and give him skin cancer. I actually wore socks when I was rowing across the ocean frequently for that very same reason. All right, we're still in no man's land here, so we shouldn't film too much. They might get suspicious. Plus there's grass coming, deadly Mekong grass, and probably rocks under it. So we might want to steer a bit before we get hung up in something. That's it for now. On the next episode of Mekong River Paddle, Felix decides